Well, we heard John Healey talking about growing Russian aggression. The latest talks between Russia and Ukraine in Turkey this afternoon lasted just over an hour. There was no Zelensky or Vladimir Putin and no ceasefire agreed, but it was confirmed more prisoners of war would be exchanged. Meanwhile, Ukraine has carried out its biggest long-range attack of the war, a series of drone strikes on Russian warplanes at 4 military bases. Let's talk to Andrew Levi, former senior British diplomat who was posted in Moscow. He also reviewed the UK's Russia policy for David Miliband and Gordon Brown, so a good person to ask about the Strategic Defence Review as well. Welcome to the programme.
Good afternoon.
Let's start with Russia and Ukraine and what was agreed in Istanbul today. Not much by the sound of things, but we have some kind of prisoner swap. But what do you make of what's come out of that meeting?
Yes, not much, I think, is a fair summary. Prisoner swaps are always good, confidence building, normally, one would think. But I think what's going on really is that the Russians are playing for time, hoping that Donald Trump will finally abandon Ukraine. And the Ukrainians are trying to prove to Donald Trump that they're worth continuing to support. European support is extremely valuable, but without the US, it's very hard to see how the Ukrainians will achieve their objectives of security and sovereignty in a peaceful future.
Let's talk then about this very audacious drone attack on the Russian air fleet. That Ukraine are proving on a world stage that they can modify these drones and they can have an incredibly destructive effect on some of the most expensive war kit in the world. What do you think to what you saw?
Yes, the defence experts, and you're talking to General Barons later, will be able to explain better than me the implications of this very asymmetric type of warfare where very cheap, relatively speaking, weaponry like drones can be used to destroy tens, hundreds, even more millions of pounds worth of equipment. We don't know exactly how much damage was done by these attacks, but they seem to have been extraordinarily well planned. I think the thing to remember is that although the Ukrainians have clearly scored a major hit with that, they had to go to enormous trouble and over a very long period of time, it seems like 18 months or so, in the meantime, these bombers were bombing Ukraine to achieve this result. And so that's, it's a success for them, but it's also a sign of how difficult their situation is.
And how, I mean, obviously that's a major blow to Russia on the world stage, but where does that leave any kind of movement towards a ceasefire? Because obviously what we have heard today is a much shorter window for any kind of cessation of violence than was previously agreed. What will Putin's next move be, do you think?
He is trying to achieve his maximalist objectives. If it means stringing the Americans along, stringing the Europeans along to the extent that the Americans or Europeans are willing to be strung along, then that's what he will do. He wants complete control of Ukraine. And the main reason for that is not so much all this sort of semi-mystic stuff one hears about Russian nationalism and the Ukrainians really being Russian. All of that's quite important, but the really important thing is about territory, it's about control, it's about resources, and fundamentally it's about the survival of what has been a very fragile regime for many years, which Putin has managed skillfully, right? He's been in a very fragile position, he's managed it skillfully, that's why he's still there.
So whatever he says in those rooms or whatever his diplomats say in these rooms, you're saying are hollow words, because the end game is to stay in power. And we've seen this elsewhere in the world. The way you do that is by staying on the front foot and continuing your military strategy.
Yes. Invading Ukraine would probably not have been a very good idea, even from the point of view of staying in power, if Putin were not running short of resources to accrue to himself and his very narrow clique of people. He's taken huge amounts out of Russia already. which are not going to the Russian population. They're going to this very, very small group of people, a few dozen people, a few thousand people in the sort of wider circle of who have incredible wealth. We think Elon Musk is wealthy. Well, compare that to Vladimir Putin and his closest friends. It's no comparison. So he felt he had a window of opportunity, as it turned out, rather wrongly, to successfully grab Ukraine. He's been somewhat heavily obstructed in that. And now he can't back out, or at least he can't back out unless he's forced to. And if he is forced to, he'll probably have to leave the leadership of Russia, and that puts him in a very vulnerable personal position.
How could he be forced to? Do you mean from within Russia or from without?
Yes, I mean, I'm primarily talking about from within. Things can tip very fast when enough people see their interests, enough people in powerful positions see their interests being served better by taking the risk of trying to depose him than by carrying on supporting him. It is possible that he would be attacked from without, but I'm certainly not suggesting anything from the West, from NATO or anything like that. But there could be other potential attacks that come his way. The most likely, though, would, if it was military, would be from within the Russian Federation itself, which is quite a diverse group of areas, including Chechnya and others that we've heard of from time to time in the past.
Andrew Levi, thank you so much for joining us. Former senior British diplomat and was posted in Moscow and reviewed UK's Russia policy for David Miliband and Gordon Brown.